Hello, my YouTube family and friends. I pray that everyone is having a beautiful, blessed Friday in the mighty name of Jesus. If you have not said it already, please let's say it together. Thank you, Jesus, for another day. It is a blessing to be alive, y'all. And I wanted to just hop on here. I want to share something. But before I do, I want to read Psalm 139. And it reads, "O Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord." And I'm going to keep reading. "You hem me in behind and before. You have laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast." So I read Psalm 139, verse 1 through 10. And again, I'm reading out of the Disciple Study Bible. It says the study Bible that helps you put faith into practice. So I think I've shown it before, but I'll show it again. It's a little beat up, or not beat up, but a little torn. But that's a sign that it's being read. But to be honest, it wasn't a brand new Bible when I bought it. But I just need to either try to find me a newer one, or I don't know. Like I said, I shared this in another video. I think I bought that at a bookstore. I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was here or if it was in Tennessee. But anyway, wanted to just hop on here and share something with everybody. Just the love of a dog. And so, and I try not to say dog because I always say Dakota is, he's a German Shepherd, and he's our rescue pup. So I ended up getting him, purchasing him before we left Tennessee, which was 2022. It was New Year's that year. I purchased him on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2022. And of course, we were going to be leaving a few months later, but the Lord just placed it in my spirit. And I'm going to tell y'all how even people who are acting ugly towards you, and they don't realize how God still, he uses all of us. He uses all of us, even in our stupidity, even in our, you know, just making bad decisions, whatever it is, we're still usable to him. And so, he don't count us out. He don't write us off. He still does what he needs to do through us. But I'm going to share something with you all, how God blessed me through a family member, which was on my late husband's side. And I'm not talking bad about her. I'm not being mean against her, but I'm telling you all the truth. Because, when we tell the truth, when we be honest, like I said, I've shared so many times before, I have lived all my life just about. I've had to, dim my light and dance around people, tip around people, because I didn't want to, shine or reveal what they were really doing. And I feel like now now I'm in my honest season. I've shared this so many times before. I don't have time to lie. I can't make up nothing. I can't sugarcoat it no more. I just got to be honest. Because, if we all be honest, we all have dealt with mean family members, in-laws, outlaws, whatever you want to call them. And when me and my late husband got married, I didn't look upon them as in-laws. I was calling his mom and dad, mama, daddy. And my mom, she didn't really care for that, because she was like, you only got one mama. And I said, yeah, that's true. I said, can't nobody take you. I was telling her, I said, can't nobody, duplicate you. You had me, you birthed me. But, she didn't understand why I was calling my late husband's mom. And I loved her. It was affectionately, I was saying that. And I go over her house, I said, hey, mama, what you doing? Or call on the phone, because, there was an agreement And even his, both of them, they agreed. They say, y'all are our children. No, you're not our biological children, but you married our sons, talking about the daughter-in-laws, and said, we our family. So that's just how it was. But I wanted to share that, to share about who I'm referring to, who actually gave me the idea to get Dakota, the German Shepherd, our German rescue pup. And so, because he's coming up on, he's almost 3 years old. But she did, she was my, or she's my, or it's my late husband's, it wasn't his sister, it was his cousin. It was his cousin, but it was a lot of stuff went on. And so she was adopted. So like I said, we gotta just be honest about everything. We gotta quit sugarcoating stuff. We say stuff, so it'll make us feel good. But that was my late husband's cousin, by blood related. But she was adopted under his parents, and so she grew up with them. So they always referred to her, that's our sister, that's our baby sister. But again, that was their cousin. So anyway, because they took her in, and I think they adopted her and stuff like that. But that's not important. It's not what I'm trying to talk about. But I'm sharing with you all. She is the one. She didn't really care for me. I've shared in a few videos, a little ways back, how she said to my late husband, or told me, she wished he had married somebody else. I don't know what it was, y'all. And I believe it, I think I do know what it was. The Lord revealed it to me, the light that he was shining on me and on my life, it was just so bright. And even though I was trying to dim it, when I was around them, they just, it's like, I just made them, they just didn't care for me. And, she would say, look, snide remarks to me, and, get smart with me, and then she'll hug me. Oh, that's just how I am. I'm like, ugh. And I literally, y'all, would have to brace myself when I would go over, around her. She'd be over his parents' house, or we have a family function, Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever. I had to do that for so many years, y'all. Just dimming my light, because I knew, had I, just been myself, it would not have been nice, because then I was not walking with the Lord the way I should have. But I was restraining myself as much as I could, and I just go silent. I sniggle, I laugh or something, just trying my best to not say what I really wanted to say. And my late husband knew it, and I did it all out of respect, most of all to God, but to him as well, because he didn't like conflict. He just didn't like it. He's very, mild-mannered, and he just didn't like conflict. So I was just trying to, keep him, just, again, I always was trying to please somebody else instead of pleasing God. But now that I think back on that, I should not have been dancing around her. I should have had a heart-to-heart with her and got that out of my, off me. But instead, I chose to cop out and, like that, going like that. But anyway, she, again, she didn't care for me. So, and she still don't. But we don't have to deal with that anymore. We're no longer around them, and their shenanigans. But anyway, the Lord removed us out of that place. But I still love them. I still pray for them every day, every night. I pray the Lord's blessing upon them. But I thank the Lord for what he's doing and what he continues to do in me and my children's lives. But she was the one, she had mentioned to me a little bit after a little after my late husband passed away, 2021. And I can't remember what brought it on, but, she knew, everybody knew we was, I was, especially me, I was having a hard time. I wasn't moping or anything when he passed away, but I was, they knew. He was that, he was the one in the family, he was the husband, he was the man, how he was, everything that he needed to be in the family for us. And so they, everybody knew that, all the family members on my mom's side and his side as well. But I can't remember again what brought that on, but she said, y'all should get a dog. And God used her to bless, and that's why we got Dakota to this day. If whenever I get a chance to talk to her, I'm gonna let her know that. I've spoken to her since we've been here in Colorado, but it was when the Lord had placed her in my spirit, and I called her. That's when I still was dealing real heavy with grief. But it was, not long after we had been here, he placed her in my spirits to call her. And I called her and we talked, you know, but it was almost like she was talking at me and not to me. But, she was just, I could tell, I know of course, she was still missing him as well because they were sort of close. She always called him for advice, this, that, and the other, so forth. But she just didn't care for me for whatever reason. She didn't care for me. And so anyway, and that was fair. But so like I said, I can't remember what brought it on for her to say that. But she knew, I guess somebody she knew because they didn't have a dog, her and her husband. But I don't know if she had read that somewhere or she just, made that recommendation. So y'all, by her not caring for me or by her not even really, liking me per se, but of course she knew I loved her. I pray she loved me. I don't know, but I'm just going by the way how she was treating me, and she just it was always standoffish. But God used her to help me in that, and that's the reason we, like, as I stated previously stated, that's why we have Dakota to this day. And I tell my children, that we'll talk about it, and I say, yeah, she's the one that put that in my spirit because, I never thought about, we were first time dog owners. And my youngest daughter, before my late husband passed away, she wanted a puppy. And he was like, no, y'all not going to take care of it, this, that, and the other. Well, as God would have it, we were going to have one, but it was going to be after he passed away. And so he had a dog in college, in his college years. He used to talk about the dog and stuff, how him and his roommate had a dog there and stuff. But anyway, like I said, I never really thought about it. And then when she said that to me, I think we were talking on the phone. And I said, and I sort of didn't really think about it much. But after, I got off the phone with her, got to thinking about it. I was like, that's not such a bad idea. And so a little time went on. But again, New Year's Day, it was in my spirit real strong. And I think a few days before that, the new year came in. And y'all, I went to Petco. And I think it was Petco, PetSmart, Petco, one of them. And I went in there, walked in there, and it seemed like everybody chose to get a puppy or a cat that day. I mean, that place was packed. And so I said, Lord, please help me, help me get the right dog, because I knew I wanted a puppy. I said, help me choose the right one. So I came across, it was Dakota. All of them, their names started with a D. So it was Diesel, Dakota, Dunn. I can't remember the other D's, but all of them was a D. And so he was a little scrawny little fella. All of them was in they had him like in a little gate thing or whatever. And they had all their names on the gate. And so I was like, oh, I don't even know which one to choose because they were trying to eat. But I noticed he was not, they were like scrummaging for the food, but he was trying to find his way to the food. They were kind of outnumbering him, if you will. So I was like, it was a little young lady in there, I think that they came from her dad and the little girl and her dad's farm or something. I can't remember. But I think they previously, had owned them or something. They were affiliated to them. And so, or tied to them. And so she came over there. She said, which one? You looking at one of them? She was a little girl. She probably, I don't know, 12, 13, something like that. May have been a little younger. And I said, yeah. And I could tell she knew all of them real well. So she started picking them up. And then keep in mind, I'm a first time dog owner, about to be dog owner. So, I hadn't really held a dog or a puppy before. And I was a little nervous or whatever. Wasn't scared, but I had never did it before. I had been family members had puppies and cats, and but I just had never had one in my home. So she picked up. I said, I think I want that one. So I pointed to Dakota, and God, it was God, y'all. It was God, and so she said, yeah, this is Dakota. So she said, you want to hold him? So I held him, and he was just kind of getting used to me and everything, kind of wiggling around. And so I said, yeah, this is the one I want. And so went up there and had to stand in a long line to get him, the full adoption and all that. I had to pay for him and, everything. And y'all, I went crazy. It was a good crazy though. I went and I think I bought maybe $150 worth, maybe probably more than that, of just toys and food and treats. And because I didn't know what to get, what he wanted. So I got up to the register. The lady said, "Yeah, you must be a first time dog owner." I said, "Yes, ma'am." So she was laughing. So I had the bags and everything. And so Dakota had him in my, taking him out to the car, to my SUV that I had at the time. And he was just moving and wiggling around. And so there was a man, he was coming in the store, an older gentleman. He said, "Do you need some help?" And I said, "No, I think I got him." And because he was sort of, he was little, but he was kind of wiggling around and stuff. And because I guess he was like, "Who is this lady and where's she taking me?" And so that was the beginning of the journey, y'all. I placed him on the back seat because the whole thing was surprising my children, my big kids. And so they were back at home. And again, this was New Year's Day. So I had put some food on, and I think I had put a roast on or something, but I was telling them to watch it. And of course it was burnt by the time I got home, because they were doing other stuff and it was just a lot going on that day. But they kept texting me and calling me, and they were like, "Mom, where you at?" I'm their only living parent, of course, and they like, "You okay? Where you at?" I said, "I'm fine. I'll be home in a little while." But it took, y'all, I had been gone that day, I think I had been gone probably 2 hours or so, because it was, like I said, it was real crowded that day in there. And I had to stand in that long line, and I didn't realize, I thought I was just going to go in there and pay for him and leave, but that was a process. So anyway, I finally made it back home while I was driving home. And Dakota, y'all, he was just laying there on the back seat like he had been there all along. And I was like, "Yep, thank you, Lord. He's the right one." And so, like I said, this was a surprise to my children, and just trying to bring some joy back into the house. Jesus was already there, but I wanted them to, have. I felt like that was really a good idea that my family, my late husband's family member had suggested. And so I thank her for that, because she's the one that suggested it. And I acted upon it. But I pulled up to the driveway, y'all, and I remember my youngest daughter, she there's a little blind to the door, the curtain, and she said, I seen her face, and she did like that, covered her mouth, and she said, "Is it?" And she opened the door, and I said, "Meet Dakota." And y'all, they were so, I'm gonna try to upload a picture of him. Well, I've shared a few videos of him, but they were so happy. They were so happy. And I just thought that was just, that was a really good New Year's gift to them and for them. And y'all, they, I had, like I said, y'all, I have spent so much money, and I always, I refer to him, I say, "That's my other son. That's my youngest son," because I don't look at him as a dog. I don't look at him as an animal. He's part of the family. He's my son. He's my youngest son. And he, sometimes he's not always obedient, but he know, because we have a little thing. So, my youngest daughter, she calls him, she said, "That's my son." I said, "Well, I guess he's my grandson then." But we just have fun with it. But yeah, like I said, from that day one, literally it was day one of the new year, 2022. And y'all, like I said, he has been such a blessing. He has been a blessing to us. Even in my prayers, I place him in my prayer to Jesus, and I said, "Lord, keep him healthy and strong," because he's been such a blessing to us. And like I said, I took him to we make sure he got his shots and everything, and he's just been so much joy that comes from him. And he can tell all the stuff that we had been going through. Of course, he was right there. But I want to share this because we thought this was so funny. And I said, "You blessed, Dakota, you just blessed." When we got ready to move here, I had, we were trying to get him where we knew we were going to drive, of course. But I said, we got to figure out a way to get him to Colorado. And we didn't want to, we didn't we didn't have any room in the SUV for him to ride with us. So I said, well, let me try to get him there, before we are. And I was looking up some spas and stuff here. So as God would have it, I found one. And so they said, yeah, I think they have shuttles. They can, so that's what I had signed up for him the shuttle to get him, it's going to be a long drive, but that's what I signed up for. Well, it was just a blessing. They got some kind of way they got mixed up on how he was supposed to get from Tennessee to Colorado. Y'all, Dakota was on a private jet, a private plane, a jet or something. And I was like, okay. He was on a little, and it was a mix up, and I didn't have to pay any extra money. I said, okay, I guess that was just meant for him to do that. So he actually flew here while we drove here, but he got a chance to fly here. And so I was like, well, I thought that was such a blessing. And the whole way, the guy who was with him, who was accompanying him here and everything, he was taking pictures of him and showing me while they were in the airport and, holding place or whatever. And I said, wow. I said, what about that? So he actually got a chance to fly here. And I was like, we didn't even get that. We had to drive. So just a blessing. I said, I tell him all the time, I said, you just blessed. You just blessed, Dakota. So, but yeah, I always like to share that. I thought that was such a blessing. And, but anyway, he made it here, of course, safely. And he ended up being placed in a spa. He made it here. He arrived here, I think, a few days before we got here. We made it here June 4th. And I think he got here like maybe just a few days before, but arrived here safely, had a wonderful trip here, and it was just a blessing, y'all. It really was. And I wanted to share this as well. He's just really been just so comforting to us, just a pleasant experience. I'm not trying to tell you to go get a dog if you don't have one, but it's more than an animal. I guess cats are too, but I really favor dogs over cats. And I've always I always liked German Shepherds anyway, because they police dogs, but I just always wanted one, and I just thank the Lord for giving us even the desires of our heart. He already knows what we want. He knows what we need. It's for such a time as this, and I thank him for that. He's sovereign. He knows everything. Even before we ask, he knows what we need. I thank him for Dakota. I do. I thank him. Like I said, he's always added into my prayers, and I pray for him. He's my he's my youngest child. So that's the way I consider him. He's not an animal. He's not a dog. He's my child. He's my son, and that's the way I love him. But he's just such a joy, and all the stuff that we have been going through, y'all, all last year, the year before, he was right there. Even right after my late husband passed away, me and the children would tease and talk about, what would Daddy think about a dog being in the house? And let me tell y'all this. So my mom, she's old school. So she said, I was raised, a dog don't supposed to be in the house. She's super old school. And I said, yeah, I get that, Mom. I said, but it's a new day. I said, I'm breaking generational curses. That's what I told her. I said, ain't no generational curses. They're gonna be broke over here. They're gonna end with me. And so she kind of looked at me, and I said, and I'm gonna tell y'all what reason she said that. So she said, I just don't agree with that. Dogs supposed to be outside. All animals they don't supposed to be walking around in no house. I said, well, that's your opinion. I said, you entitled to your opinion. I said, but this is what I choose to do. That's my house, so that's what I'm gonna do. And so time went on after we had got him after New Year's Day 2022. So I took, I said, well, let me try to get them to warm up to Dakota. And like I said, I knew we were leaving, but I was just trying to, get them to whatever. So this is after I had, of course, I had resigned from working. I think this was after, in January of that year. And so my dad, he's not afraid of dogs or anything. So he's in his 80s. So I took Dakota over there, me and him, because at this time I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't working. Just sort of waiting on June for us to, of course, we had to wait to get the house sold so we could move here. And so, you know, I had a lot of time on my hands, stuff like that. So I was just, you know, trying to spend time with them as much as I could. I knew we were leaving. So I took Dakota over there to, you know, so my dad come meet him and stuff. And he said, oh, that's a cute little doggy. And so Dakota was kind of sniffing around on his shoes and stuff like that. But I could tell, you know, they didn't, he couldn't come in the house. I knew that. So we just stayed outside, you know, whatever. But there's nothing wrong with how you're raised or whatever. But, you know, like I told my mom, I said, it's a new day. I said, let's get out of the old mindsets. I said, animals are so friendly, and, you know, y'all, you know, they grew up with a dog being outside, you know, in a dog house, or, you know, under a porch somewhere or something. No, I said, it's a new day. I said, you know, I said, some of these animals are, or they are part of the family, you know. And I used to could never understand. I was like, why is that dog sleeping in that bed? You know, I see movies or whatever, but I understand it, y'all. It's so much love that comes from them. They are so loyal. We could learn so much from them. They are so loyal. They are so loyal. And that's what I really love about Dakota. He's such a blessing to us. And he, you know, he can feel when we were going through all of, so I want to share this too. So my mom, well, it's not the reason she said that about dogs should be outside, but she was sort of, I'll say, mentally abused growing up. You know, they lived in a day where they had to walk to school through rain, sleet, or snow. But she said that she was just always afraid of dogs because she said her older siblings, brothers, would, you know, try to sick a dog on them, you know, on her, I guess. I don't know about the other siblings, but she just had a fear. She had a fear about dogs. And, you know, she see one, you know, still to this day, she's like that. I don't know if she's gotten better now because I haven't been around in a few years, but I know before we left, you know, she just gets so tensed up. You know, we would tease her about it, me and my younger siblings, but now that I think about it, it's not funny. It wasn't funny because, you know, it's a fear. It's a fear. Nobody needs to be teased about their fear. So anyway, after we got Dakota, after I got him, and, you know, he was part of our home and everything, family. So I had invited her, you know, them over a few times before we left for dinner, things like that. And so I told her, I said, Mom, I think what you need to do to get, you know, used to him. I said, even though we're leaving, you know, we're not going to be here much longer, but I said, you know, just so you can ease yourself, you know, so you won't be so stressed. I said, let him just get close to you, you know, because she would always get so, a dog just be of a few feet of her, you know, get that dog. And the dog wouldn't be doing anything. You know, the dog would just be sitting there looking at her, just sitting. But she, get that dog, you know. And she wouldn't even want the puppy or dog nowhere near her. You know, just get him out, you know. And so she would even, I think, avoid going over different relatives' homes because if they had a animal. So I said, Mom, that's a fear. I said, but you know, you need to calm yourself because, you know, they're not going to bother you, and they can sense that you are afraid of them. And they're not trying to bite you. They're not trying to hurt you. That's why I would tell her, I said, they're just trying to, you know, be friendly towards you. So anyway, she was able to warm up. Dakota was able to warm up to her just a little bit, but for the most part, we had to keep him in his little kennel that we had purchased for him because whenever they would come over there, because she would just get so, you know, whatever. But I wanted to definitely share this part. So I got a little tickle in my throat, y'all. So when we were going through all of what we were going through last year and the year prior, 2023, but really I want to emphasize about last year when we had to live with the lady from church, and when we were in the hotels, things of that nature. Dakota, y'all, so loyal. And of course, you know, dog's gonna go wherever you go, you know, that's just how it is. But we never missed a beat with him. You know, we never missed anything, doing anything for him. We still took him on to the park, and it was one it was one time, y'all. It was so much going on in my head when we first moved here. That's when I was looking for a job or waiting to find a job. That was 2022, the year of, 2022, 2023. And y'all, Dakota was going to the park, I know, at least 3 or 4 times a week. And weekend too. I'm talking about through the week and the weekend too. The weekend would highlight it, you know, because of course I would meet, you know, a lot of nice people here and talk to people, find out more about dogs and stuff like that. But we was taking him to, we explored so many parks here, and I got to meet a lot of nice people and stuff in that. But going back to when we were really going through, you know, just for me not being disobedient and not doing what God was wanting me to do, was trust his perfect timing and to not be fearful of what was going on. But I allowed the enemy to overtake my mind, and I just, I got anxious, got worried, stressed out and stuff like that. But I know Dakota felt that, because a lot of times he just lay on the bed. But I want to share this too. When my children, when they left for that month, this is when I was staying, and I'm gonna try not to get emotional, y'all. But when I was staying with we were staying with a lady from church. Dakota it was just me and him, because all three of them, the younger three, had left. And I was like, wow, it's just me and him now. Because my youngest son, he had mentioned to me, he said, Mom, because he drove back to Tennessee, of course, in his car. And he said, Mom, at first he was going to take Dakota back with him. But then my late husband's father said, no, you can't bring no dog here. You know, because they got the same mentality as my mom, them. Okay, no dog supposed to stay in the house. And so, that was a no. And then they got a big garage, but they said, no, he can't stay in the garage. So I was like, okay. And I told my youngest son, I said, he'll just stay here with me, because he's not going to go there and get mistreated. So, and I sort of got, I didn't like that, how they were talking about that. And I noticed every time when they were checking on us when we first moved here, my mom, they would ask about Dakota, but his parents would always like, that's just a dog, whatever. And I'm like, you have no idea. You have no idea what this dog means to me and my children. He's been here with us. He's more loyal than they are, to be honest. But anyway, when my youngest son, he said, Mama, I can't take him. And I said, that's okay. He could just stay here with me. And so keep in mind, of course, I had taken care of him somewhat when we were in Tennessee in our house, the old house, but my children were more involved with him than I was, because I was trying to, do what I needed to do to get the house sold. So I was always just busy. I just played with him, didn't really, hands on with him like they were. I mean, I did, but I didn't. And so anyway, when he told me that, my youngest son, I said, yeah, he'll just stay here with me. So that, I was like, okay, now I gotta step it up, And like I said, I knew, about how to feed him and stuff like that, do for him his food. And so I'm talking about just it was just me and him. I always had them, and we always loved on them together. But I was like, yeah, it's just me and him. And so, y'all, but that was so beautiful, y'all. There were so many times, I was feeling so down and out. I'd be on that bed up there in her upstairs in that room, just crying my heart out and praying or whatever. And Dakota just be laying there, he'd be snugged right there, right my feet, just laying right there. And I noticed in the morning time, y'all, this was just so touching for me, heartwarming. But I would be getting ready, because he could, when it was time for me to get ready to go to work. That's when I was Ubering, and I get up out the bed. He always laid at the bottom of the bed, because when my youngest daughter was there, she had left to go to college. But when she was there, he would be laying right there in the middle of us, because we shared a bed together, because we were upstairs, and so that's just, we were kind of close quartered there. It was only one bed in that room. But so me and her, it was a real big bed. It was a king bed. But she slept on that, one side, and I slept on the other. But Dakota, when she was there, he would sort of sleep in the middle. And I said, no. I said, let him have at the bottom, because, it gave him more room. And it gave us more room, too. And so he would be at the bottom. So, again, she kind of I wake up some mornings, before she left to go to college, and he'd be right up under her, laying on her, or something, on her feet, or arm or shoulder or something. But anyway, after everybody left, like I said, it was just me and him. And I would get up out the bed, and I noticed he would move to the top of the bed, from the bottom to the top, and lay on the pillow. He just lay on the pillow that I had laid my head on, and just snuggle up. And I said, oh, Dakota, I said, yeah, I gotta go to work, I'll be back. And kind of talk to him a little bit. And then I'm gonna be honest, there was some mornings, y'all, I was having a morning, because it's just life. I was like, Lord, what's going on? But Jesus never left me. He never forsake me or anything. But that dog, y'all, that puppy, my son, is affectionately called. He was such a blessing during that time, that month while they were gone. And during the whole time we've had him, he's been a blessing, but especially during that time, because, and I want to share this because I like being honest. I have to be. I can't be no other way. So the lady who we were living with, she had a dog, but her dog was an older dog. So they got along, I guess, okay. But I noticed, she started complaining about Dakota, and it was almost like he was so, because Dakota's young, so her dog was old, so her dog was more so, more complacent, and just kind of laying around a lot. He was an older dog. And we would tease, me and the children, say, that's Dakota's uncle, long lost uncle. But, we were just trying to make it work, y'all. We were just trying to make it work however we could. But I noticed that she was allowing the enemy to use her, because she started complaining about Dakota, She started coming up with, y'all, I just had to go through so much with that lady. And I loved her so much, and I feel like she loved me. But I do feel like the enemy was using her to come against me. After I said, okay, Lord, this is what we're going to have to do for a little bit, and I'm just going to make the best of it. And when I said that, that's when the enemy was trying to come against me with her, and, for her, using her, and she was allowing him to use her. But she started coming up with, he needs his shots, and I'm like, wait a minute, you're coming against my family member now, what's going on? And I never, said anything mean to her or anything, but I would tell my children, I said, I wonder what's up with that, but what it was, I figured it out. The Holy Spirit, informed me. It was, Dakota was frisky, he had a lot of movement. She wasn't used to that, her dog. And then, Dakota is still learning a lot of commands, and even though he's almost 3, but he had a little rough, upbringing. They were being mistreated wherever they were at, and he was malnourished. He's just been through a lot. And so, we got to be patient. Like we are patient with one another, we got to be patient with animals, and just like Jesus is patient with us every single second of the day. But we got to extend that same grace and mercy to our puppies and animals. And so anyway, but she was just coming up with different stuff. I think he needs to go get checked. He needs to get his shots. And I said, before we moved in with you, he's been vaccinated. He's healthy. Everything's fine with him. Oh, I noticed, this about him. I noticed this, I noticed that. She was just coming up with all type of stuff. So I'm like, what is with her and Dakota? Then I noticed, now, mind you, I had to leave he was with her for, I think 4 days. I can't remember. But when my daughter first started her, she's a freshman, about to be, of course, a sophomore. But when she first, when she left, started schooling in the college in Chicago, in September, so I had to drive, I had to drive, rent the car, because I have a car. Car got repoed. So I had to drive, to get to her, because my late husband's parents, they were going to, take her there. But I had to, I was going to be there too to help her get in her dorm and things like that. And then I had to bring my oldest daughter back here with me because she wanted to come back with me. But anyway, so the Dakota had to stay with the lady we live with. He had to stay there them days while I was gone. So I said, oh, I said, Lord, please let him be okay. Let him be obedient to her. Because, I know she didn't really care for him, but she acted like she did. She always, he had actually gotten on the schedule because, we had been through so much living in a hotel, and his eating was a little off, but he still was eating. But, she was like, yeah, now he can be on the schedule, and, him and her dog would eat together. They had their separate pans and stuff and drink their water. It was seemed like everything was okay. But like I said, I don't know what happened. I don't know. She started acting sort of slightly mean towards him. And I never seen her do anything, but she was just talking about him in a mean way. So I was like, I better watch her. So anyway, Dakota had to stay there by himself with her. And so I had told her, she said, oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. Because, she had mentioned to me, she was like, yeah, you can probably get him she was I think she was sort of recommending me to let him stay in one of those pet spas or whatever. And I was thinking to myself, I don't even have no money for that. But I was like, why he can't just stay here? And she was like, yeah, she was making little comments. It's not good for him to stay in the house. He's young, this, that, and the other. So I'm thinking, your dog stay in the house, But y'all, again, she didn't I don't think for whatever reason, she didn't really care for him because, like I said, he was so active and he run around the house. He's a puppy, whatever. He ran around the house when we had in Tennessee. But it's like she had something with him. So, like I said, I was keeping a close eye on her. And I caught her one day. She was calling herself playing with him. And she was like, rah, doing like that. But it was sort of weird how she was doing it. And Dakota was barking at her. It was like, I don't like that. He was letting her know, I don't like that. I mean, he was barking pretty fierce at her. And he was kind of, how when puppies, they kind of stand, they back on their hind leg, and they, it's like he was not going to attack her, but okay, I need to defend myself from you. And so anyway, thought that was so funny, but I was like, I'm watching you. So like I said, when me and my oldest daughter made it back here to Colorado from Chicago, we made it back super late that night, that Thursday morning after midnight. And I think it was Thursday. And Dakota, I heard him in the garage. We parking the car in the garage. He heard us, y'all. He was barking so loud because that's just how he is. That's his way of saying that, you back, I'm here, you here. And so I opened the door, her door, there were, let's see, 2 doors you had to go through. So the garage door, of course, and then there was another door coming out the washroom, the laundry room, before you get into the house area. So anyway, I opened the door and he was right there just barking. So I was like, what? So I had asked her, I said, has he been good? Is he, I didn't get a chance to ask her till the next day because I don't think she even came out of her room. But I was like, why is he outside in the hallway? He was upstairs in the hallway area. And I was like, why is he, and it was late. So I was like, okay, I'll find out tomorrow what's been going on while I've been gone. And so she was like, yeah, he just slept in the hallway. And I was like, why didn't you steer him and, have him sleeping in the bed that he slept in since we've been here? But I was like, okay. No, she said him and her dog both had been sleeping in the hallway. And I was like, So I don't know how true that was, y'all. It don't even matter because we're no longer there. I'm still praying for her. But, I just started to notice, like I said, it was like she had something with him. And I think, I know the main thing, like I said, she was allowing the enemy to use her. I don't know why she wanted to come against a puppy. He's a sweet puppy. He never did anything mean in the house. Now, I will be honest. She didn't like. She had mentioned to me and my youngest son, well, I can't, because we were there. Well, we did. Well, as God would have it, we were not there during Christmas, but we thought we were going to be there. But she was saying, well, I'm not going to be able to put my Christmas decorations up because he bites on, he chews on everything. She kept saying that, and then she would mention how he didn't follow, he wasn't obedient, and I get that because we were real sort of laid back with him, when we were in Tennessee. He's a puppy, I'm like, give him a break, he's been through a lot. But he did what we told him to do. But like I said, to be honest, I think he could feel from her negative energy. It was some evil spirits going on sometimes with her, and I think he felt that, or I believe he did, and that's why he, because I would notice, like I said, she would try to play with him and stuff, and he kind of bark at her, but not mean, but just like, get away from me. And I kind of laugh it off, ha 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 ha, yeah. But he, dogs know, just like babies know, dogs know. They can tell. I feel like they can discern evil spirits, or when you're not being godly. I feel like that. I really do. But anyway, but like I said, she was just coming up with all type of stuff, making up all type of stuff, And I feel like she was trying to wanted me to get rid of him. And I'm like, that's never going to happen. We'll leave before we get rid of him. Because, see, that's our family member. So, and she was like, yeah, I think you should. Because, like I said, she was suggesting that while I was gone in a few days, that I put him in a spa, or, so he could be tended to, And I'm thinking, why he can't, this big old house, why he can't just stay here with you? What are you doing? You could, all you got to do is feed him. Yeah, I just think that'll be a better idea. But I'm thinking, well, if you pay for it, I'll gladly do it. I'm like, I don't have no money to be doing that. I already had to get the money up make sure I had money to travel all the way to Chicago and back, and hotel, and making sure my daughter was good, what she needed. So I'm like, no, that's a no. So she stopped suggesting it after she saw that, I wasn't going for it. But like I said, I just couldn't understand. And even my youngest son and my daughter too, my oldest daughter, they said, Mama, what's with her? And I said, I don't know. And then, the other thing, she didn't like him barking. His barking was a way of letting us know, when he would hear my youngest son pulling up in the garage, or he know I was coming through the door, he just barked. He was a puppy, And she said, stop that barking. And she, just, y'all, like I said, I did respect the fact that we were in her house, and I understand that a lot of stuff she didn't like. Then she started, why does he have to go pee so much? Just nitpicking. I'm like, I don't know. He drinks a lot of water. I don't know. But again, I'm so happy. Thank you, Jesus, that we don't have to deal with that anymore. We're in our own place of residence. I just thank God every day for this place, y'all. I thank him for Dakota. I thank him for his allowing us to meet Dakota, for Dakota to meet us. And it may sound silly, but it ain't silly. I know it ain't. But he's just been such a joy. He's been a blessing from heaven to us, from God. Like I said, I thank my late husband's cousin. She's the one that recommended to get a puppy, and I'm glad I did, do that upon her recommendation, because it's just been wonderful. And it's so weird, y'all, because she's the one who recommended him for us to get a puppy. But as it turned out, my late husband's father, he'd come over to the house and he'd just be looking at Dakota like, why are you in the house? I don't know what that is, y'all. I don't know what that is. And I know they grew up in a different time, but like I said, I don't know anybody who keeps their dog outside anymore. I mean, I'm not judging, but I don't know anybody. Everybody. I watch videos. I have been over family members' house, friends' house. Everybody got their animals inside now. And I'm like, are y'all still stuck in time? Because who still does that? You know, and my mom, she was so adamant about that. Dogs are not supposed to be on in nobody's house. And I'm like, what? Where are they supposed to be? I got a little agitated about that comment because I'm like, no, you talking about somebody who's been more loyal than y'all have been. You know, I'm just gonna put that out there. That puppy in there in the living room, he's been more loyal to us than any of them back in Tennessee have. Any of them, any of them. And I thank God for that. And that's what I mean about loyalty. You know, you can be gone. When I was gone to Chicago and I came back, y'all, he was about to knock me down. He was so happy to see me. And I pray that she had not been mistreating him or anything. But I noticed there was a few times where, and I'm not talking about her, y'all, I'm telling the truth. But I had noticed, and me and my oldest daughter had noticed, there was a couple of times, and I wasn't being neglectful, but I was just going through so much, and my mind was all over the place. I didn't want to really be in her house, but I was making the best of it. So, when I would get Instacart, sometimes I would forget to get his food. He didn't go without any food, but sometimes he would get, sort of low. So she would give him some of her dog's food because she had a big old bag of food. So then we noticed, me and my oldest daughter noticed that the big bag of her dog food it just disappeared. It disappeared. And so it was almost like, you're not going, when you get low or you run out. And like I said, there was never a time he didn't have any food. He just got low. But it was like she was saying, I'm putting my dog's food up. She, like I said, she was sort of getting a little, I don't know, a little petty at the end. Like I said, she didn't want us there. She wanted the money. She wanted me to pay her, but she wanted us to be there on her terms. And like I said, when I first met her, I told her we had a puppy. And, oh, that's fine. I have a puppy too. I have a dog too. And it just seemed like everything was okay. But like I said, y'all, she had, I don't know what her thing was with Dakota, but Dakota ain't hurt nobody. Dakota ain't did nothing to nobody, and never will. But I'm like, I'm defending my pup, my son. I'm defending my grandson. I said no, he ain't nothing wrong with him. She was trying to talk about you need to go get him checked. I think he got this. I said nope. We got him vaccinated before we even moved in with you. He's good. He's healthy. And then she stopped talking about that. She started talking about something else. Just complaining. She's complaining he's barking. You need to teach him not to bark so much, But he was just happy, y'all. He was just happy. And to be honest, he's probably happier than we were in that house. I'm just going to be honest. Because, we didn't really want to be there. But it's like he was like, I'm going to make the best out of it. And like I said, a lot of nights when it was just me and him, I just be, petting on him, and I say, thank you, Lord, for this puppy, because he's just really been a blessing. And I could tell when I got ready to go to Chicago, he was like, please don't leave me here. Please don't leave me here. And I had, at first I was going to take him with me, but I was like, there's such a long drive, and I couldn't really afford to stop and do his little bathroom breaks and walk breaks. I had to get there. I was on a timeline because I had to come back to work. So I was like, please, Lord, just keep him protected, And I feel like she didn't do anything to him mean or anything, but I just, I thought about him, as much as I could, but I was like, Lord, he's in your hand. I pray, she's not doing anything mean to him or anything like that. I feel like she wasn't, but like I said, we just never know, but we just pray for the best. But yeah, he was looking at me like, please don't leave me here with her. And him and her dog, like I said, her dog was older, so they'll be running in the backyard back and forth and stuff like that. And but like I said, her dog was old. I forget how old he was. He was like 8, I think, 7 or 8 years old. So he was up in age, and so he was sickly too. So he played as much as he could. But to be honest, y'all, I feel like Dakota brought a little life to him, you know, because when we first moved in there, you know, he was just moping around, and you know, he come in there and kind of wanted me to pet him, you know, very friendly, beautiful dog. And and but I know when Dakota would be free, you know, frisky with him and stuff, and barking at him and stuff like that. He's young, you know, and so but I feel like, you know, I feel like he enjoyed him being there. And my youngest son, he had made a comment when we got ready to leave. I said, "Thank you, Lord, for answering prayer." That day we was leaving that Saturday, moving out, and so moving in here, and so my youngest son, we were laughing. He said, "Mama," I bet he missed Dakota." Talking about the dog, the older dog. I said, "I bet he do too." I said, "Cause Dakota brought some life in that house. You know, it was just a quiet house, and she just didn't like him barking and having fun and stuff." But I was like, okay, you know, and as God will have it, we no longer have to deal with none of that. But again, I wanted to share this video. I pray I've said something that's been a blessing to somebody. You know, I was just talking about Dakota. That's like my other son, my grandson is what I call him, affectionately called my grandson. But as always, I pray you've had a beautiful, blessed day, Friday, in Jesus' name. I pray that you were able to bless somebody today. You were already blessed when Jesus woke you up this morning. I pray you have thanked him more than one time today. Thank him for all that he has done, he's doing, and all that he's about to do in your life, in your family's life. The best is still yet to come for you and for me. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. I love you, but remember, Jesus loves you so much more. Thank you all for watching these videos, for subscribing. This channel is growing in the mighty name of Jesus. It belongs to all glory, honor, praise go to Jesus and not me. I pray you always hear Jesus speaking through me. I don't come on here faking. I don't come on here just making up stuff. This is all real. It's real life over here. I thank the Lord for what he's doing in my life. I know that the best days, I have not even seen my best days. My children have not either. You have not either. You know, we just got to keep trusting in God's perfect timing, and he's going to do something that's just going to blow our mind. So keep trusting God. Keep him first. You'll never be last. Always remember, only what you do for Christ will last. Thank you all for listening. Have a beautiful weekend. I'm going to try to come back on here tomorrow with upload a few more videos over the weekend. Have a beautiful, blessed evening. In Jesus' name. Bye-bye.